I have a story that I want to share with all of you today, but first, before I share that story, I just want you to imagine something really, really quickly. I want you to imagine a situation where you couldn't tell the people you care the most about in this world that you love them. Imagine a situation where you couldn't even tell the people you care about the most in this world about some of your basic needs because of your communication challenges. This used to be my life. When I was diagnosed with autism, it was 1992, and the numbers of autism were about 1 in every 1,000 being diagnosed in the United States. Everyone assumed everyone with autism was great at math, and that every person with autism would be diagnosed as a boy, and that we were actually just talking about Las Vegas earlier in the car, that everyone would turn 21 and you would be able to win them a lot of money at the blackjack tables if you brought them to Las Vegas with you. But we truly, truly realize in our community today is that autism is a spectrum. As Mark just mentioned, 1 in 59 are now on the autism spectrum today. So to kick off today's presentation, I want to share a quick video with all of you so you can learn a little bit more about my journey from nonverbal autism to professional speaker.
Our next guest is an accomplished public speaker and activist who has devoted his life to helping others. Not bad for a guy who was completely nonverbal for the first few years of his life. But once Kerry Magro found his voice, he had a lot to say.
My parents have always told me I'm special, so why am I special? And then later on, I realized that I'm even more special because I have autism.
Kerry Magro's childhood was marked with rough patches. He was completely nonverbal at age 2 and diagnosed with autism at age 4.
I just remember having difficulties trying to explain myself to the world around me.
When Kerry did speak, he struggled to express himself.
Most of my memories were simply just about that kid who wanted to communicate with the world around him, but didn't have the verbal means of actually doing that.
His mother, Suzanne, remembers watching her son have a hard time adjusting to the outside world.
He turned 2 and he was scared of everything. He was scared of the water, he was scared of the rain.
But as the years went on, Kerry slowly began to find his words.
When you can't communicate with the people you love the most in this world about even some of your basic needs, it gets really, really tough. But luckily, once I started talking, I never stopped talking.
Kerry went on to graduate high school, attend Seton Hall University, and then independent living. Today, Kerry is a professional speaker, activist, and mentor dedicated to educating people about autism.
Wow. This is a tough one today. Kerry is currently finishing up his doctorate in education while also writing a children's book about autism acceptance in addition to his public speaking. Good for him.
If I leave you with anything today, it's that you realize that it truly, truly takes a village for us to get to where we want to go as a disability community. Now, just to get a sense of the room, just by a show of hands really quickly, how many parents of a child with autism do we have today? Okay, so we have a few. How many educators do we have of a student with autism? How many siblings do we have of a child with autism? How many grandparents do we have of a child with autism? There we go. And how many self-advocates do we have in the audience? Awesome. We have some self-advocate representation. Perfect. Did I miss anyone? Okay, perfect. It truly, truly takes all of us in a society today. Individuals with disabilities. 1 in 5 Americans currently have some form of disability, making up the largest minority today in the United States. Due to the severity of some disabilities, those individuals might not be able to speak up about their specific challenges, which means every single person in this room with your voice today, speaking up, and obviously Fizz and Mesa and the amazing work they're doing to speak up for our community, We need all of our collective voices. Every single one of your stories in this room today has power to make positive change. It's not only the water cooler talking about your own personal stories, but it's also about the digital movement we live in, sharing your stories on Facebook and making sure that we are having those stories told, because when we talk about the word inclusion, this will truly help us. So when I was diagnosed with autism at 4, one of my earliest memories I remember was actually the first time I knew I was special. Now, I wouldn't know that I had autism until I was 11 and a half years old, when I was in a social skills class and we were playing disability celebrity bingo. We were learning that Michael Jordan has ADD, Magic Johnson has ADHD. And I asked my teacher at the end of the class, so why am I special? Because you just told us all these cool celebrities are special, so why am I special? And that was the first time I learned I had autism. But from the earliest times of sitting in pediatricians' offices, I remember 2 kids in particular, actually. One kid who was spinning around in circles and stimming, meaning moving his hands back and forth, and then another kid who was stacking up Legos. And I remember at that time thinking to myself for the first time, so why am I here? Why am I in this room today? And that was the first time I realized that I had special needs. And it wouldn't be until years later that I realized, after overcoming many of my obstacles, thankfully to years of occupational, physical, speech, music, and theater therapy, that I could potentially become a self-advocate for this community. I realized that during my journey, I knew I had to be brave. I couldn't let the thought of having autism define my life be a reason for me to stand in the shadows. Because every single person on this planet, I truly believe, is born to stand out in one way or another. So I decided that I needed to, instead of letting autism define me, realize that I needed to define autism. So that became my self-advocate path, where I decided to start sitting in on my IEP meetings to learn more about my obstacles. And that was one of the first times I realized that people with autism, especially on the high-functioning end, have amazing, amazing strengths and amazing, amazing talents. And that's when I realized my interests and talents can turn into a career. And that's why I'm speaking in front of all of you today as someone who could say that has been speaking on the speaker circuit for the past 9 years, getting the wonderful opportunity to travel to over 900 events in the past 9 years, not only in the U.S., but internationally, to spread awareness, acceptance, and understanding of our very special community. It's given us the opportunity to work on several best-selling books. As an thank you to Visit Mesa for becoming the first autism-certified city, we're actually going to be donating signed copies of each and every single one of our books as a thank you for their continued effort towards inclusion. Also gained the opportunity to work on major motion pictures to bring a realistic portrayal of autism and disability to our entertainment industry. We're currently working on a TV series on HBO right now called Mrs. Fletcher, which actually focuses on, for one of the first times in our entertainment history, on severe autism. Along the way, getting to also work on a nonprofit organization where we provide scholarships for students with autism to go to college. I'm happy to say in the past 8 years, we've given out 68 scholarships for students with autism to go to college. At the end of our presentation today, we will be outside. So if you have any further questions, we'll also be signing some of our books, Defining Autism from the Heart. My roles today, I realized when I started talking about inclusion, the first few years I started public speaking, everything was focused on early access to care. It was focused on those first 5 years to truly, truly help people with autism. But I realized right away that autism was growing up and that these kids would one day become adults with autism, and we need to be ready for them. And it made me realize the importance of unity in our community. It feels like a lot of the times we can feel so divided in our own missions and hopes and goals. And one of the things I want to do today as an autism advocate and as a self-advocate is to bring unity to our autism community. I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with great groups such as IBCCS as a board member for the past 2 years, getting to work on the board of directors for the National Autism Association, the panel of advisors for the Autism Society. Great job, Autism Society Greater Phoenix. I'll be in your area in September 2020. And then also on the Autism on the Seas Advisory Board. In addition to that, also getting to work on the social media campaign for 2 shows, which are now spotlighting our autism community in The Good Doctor on ABC, which features a surgeon who is on the autism spectrum, who also has Savant syndrome, and then also a Netflix series called Atypical, which features a 18-year-old man on the autism spectrum trying to navigate his own autism diagnosis, but then also finding a relationship on the autism spectrum. So this is just a quick breakdown of some of the numbers as we're currently seeing them in the United States and internationally on our autism community. Currently today, over 3.5 million Americans have some form of autism diagnosis. 1 in 34 boys, 1 in 151 girls. So many times in our talks, we highlight the importance of girl autism because girls are unfortunately still falling through the cracks in many instances. Over 70 million people worldwide have a form of diagnosis. Not only does 1% of the US population have an autism diagnosis, but we're continuing to see the rise and prevalence of autism, not only in the US, but internationally. The cost of autism is about $60,000 a year on average across the lifespan for those with autism. And again, as we just mentioned, children with autism will one day become adults with autism, and we really need to be ready for them. Over 500,000 children with autism will become adults within the next decade. And with that, the majority of individuals with autism are still unemployed or underemployed in our communities. Individuals with autism are more likely to be bullied than any other individual with a developmental disability. And another big statistic is that most adults with autism still live with their aging families. So if I could tell you anything about autism today, that it's truly, and I sound like a broken record at times, it is a spectrum. And what helped me get to where I am today, one of the huge mantras that I keep focusing in my head was the importance of understanding that I had strengths. I felt like I had a 9-to-5 job since I was 4 years old, going from different therapy appointments when kids I know my own age were getting involved with extracurricular activities. I was the kid sitting in a child's with a child study team doing extra occupational therapy, literally walking for hours a day on a balance beam to work on some of my balance issues. And one of the things I realized right away is that I was focused so much of my time on my weaknesses, but where was there an area where people were focusing on my strengths? Now, in our educational community today, we call this the deficit model, where there's so much focus on, it feels like a lot of times we focus 99.9% of the time on where kids' challenges are. But what are we doing to nurture their strengths? What are we doing to nurture their talents, which could potentially later down the line turn into a career for those with autism? So my challenges today, and that's why I'm so glad that Visit Mesa have decided to become the first of hopefully many autism certified cities, because growing up I had countless challenges going to different travel destinations. I had challenges with theme parks. And even though I said my first word when I was about 3 and then started speaking complete sentences when I was 7, most of my challenges growing up were sensory related. I couldn't have hands on my stamps on my hands. Big crowds would make me feel overwhelmed at all times. Loud noises would also impact me as well. I couldn't be bathed until I was about 18 months old due to the feeling of water on my skin. Escalators was also a very big challenge. But I think one of the biggest challenges in public areas growing up was the being bullied. Because as much as we talk about autism awareness and disability awareness, we also have to remember to include disability understanding and autism understanding and autism acceptance, because so many self-advocates such as myself want to be truly embraced and accepted for exactly who we are. Awareness is just one of the very, very starting points of that conversation. So, and actually, just really quickly give you a little transition to that. You gotta love transitions. It's one of the challenges that many in the autism community sometimes face. Anyways, so one of the things that we currently do today, and it's a big reason why I love the fact that I can today call myself a board member of IBCCS, is that one of the hardest things I see when I work with families as a consultant and as a life coach is when I see that kids can't be engaged in the world around them because they don't have the opportunities available to them. So with that in mind, a few years ago, as part of our nonprofit organization, we started a sensory-friendly event that I wanted to share with all of you today because of the importance of this topic of inclusion.
I want everybody to be happy.
And some children with autism are very happy after meeting with Santa.
That's the best Christmas gift of all.
28-year-old Kerry Magro, aka Santa, also has autism. He says he couldn't visit the man in red as a child because of his sensory challenges. So now he creates Santa meet and greet events for children with autism because he understands their needs.
This event is more inclusive because we dim the lights, we turn down the sound and try to help them as much as we can.
No, please, take my seat.
Magro says he makes sure each child has his undivided attention while they are together. He also has a team of occupational therapists and special education teachers to help at each event.
Just does a great job. Just takes his time. There's no rush.
They all work together to give these families an experience they might not be able to get anywhere else, and to make their holidays a little brighter.
Autism doesn't stop in December. It doesn't stop during Christmas.
For InsideEdition.com, I'm Mara Montalbano.
So this is just one small part of what we're trying to do to make the world a more engaging place for all. I am from Hoboken, New Jersey, and in my local area, I have been trying to build on autism acceptance for countless years. And one of the big ways I've realized that we could truly do this is by making sure that we're keeping our kids engaged. That's why I love Visit Mesa and what they're doing, but I also am continuing to advocate for events that are focused on being sensory inclusive for individuals in their autism community, but those with sensory challenges. And another big reason I can't thank Visit Mesa enough is actually a quote. I just was in Jackson, Mississippi, giving a talk to about 300 educators for professional development training. And one of the parents who had a child with cerebral palsy came up to me after the presentation because the focus of the presentation was on inclusion. And she said this quote, "I would rather you include my child on a daily basis rather than make them homecoming king or queen for one." Now, I'm sure many of you in this room have seen the social media stories where the individual with special needs gets to be homecoming king or queen. And one of the things that I truly, truly realized is that while sensory-friendly events are great, why not having sensory-friendly centers? Why not having autism certified centers? Because when we think about these events, it's just these one-off events. Maybe they're annual, maybe they're several times during the year. But if we're really talking about true inclusion, we need to see more and more groups getting these certified autism center accreditations. We need to see more autism certified cities, because that's when we will get to true inclusion in our communities. That's when we will have individuals with disabilities truly, truly embraced in our communities. And one of the big ways we're trying to currently do that today, as we saw a few self-advocates' hands up in the room today, is that in our disability community, we see so many bloggers, we see so many parent bloggers, we see so many educator bloggers, we see so many therapist bloggers. But one of the things we really want to see more of in our community is the self-advocates. We want to hear from the people with those first-person perspectives. And as a way of spreading inclusion in our community, as part of our nonprofit, we started a video series a few years ago called A Special Community, where now every single place we go, we bring a tripod and a camera, and we sit down with self-advocates for 10 to 15 minutes at a time, and we ask them, what would you like the world to know about you? Not only to give them a platform to share their stories, to break down barriers for those with special needs, but also to help them nurture self-advocacy skills. Because we need these kids to become their best self-advocates from a very, very early age, because it could make a lifetime of difference for them. So I want to share one of the videos we did with an 8-year-old boy named Liam, who wanted the world to know and had difficulties his entire time traveling, wanted the world to know that sometimes because of having autism, it's hard to make connections, and sometimes it's hard to make friends. And this is what Liam wanted the world to know about his story.
So we're going to be talking to the camera, and we want to make you famous. So we literally want to make you probably the most famous person on the planet. How's this sound?
Okay.
No pressure.
Autism basically makes it hard to connect. It makes it hard to get that connection, to make friends. They feel like more loners than, well, in groups. It's also a learning disability, and in some cases, it's hard. You can't speak in some cases. I met a kid called Tom, who he has autism, but he can't speak in proper English. He needs an iPad.
So Liam, one thing I want you to know is that I was actually diagnosed with autism at an early age too. And I don't know if I've ever actually told you that, but I want you to know that I will always be here to be your friend if you need a friend, okay?
Yeah.
Because even though it may be hard at times to connect to other people, you know, I feel like so many people with autism like us just want like what anyone else wants, you know, to feel connected and to have a friend. So you'll just got a friend in me, okay? You want to pound this up?
Yeah.
Do you blow it up too? Oh, he blows it up. You're awesome, Liam.
I'm kind of tearing up. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's kind of a
This was Liam's first ever opportunity to share with anyone in the world about his autism diagnosis. After years of feeling that his autism defined who he was as a person, he realized that he wanted to become a self-advocate because he realized that people with autism were having challenges just like him. And we found that very powerful. I know when I was an 8-year-old boy, I would never have been brave enough to do something like this. And it really made us understand the key topic, again, of inclusion. It means having all of our voices as a collective unit to make positive change. Because at the end of the day, regardless of where we are as an autism community, I'm sure most of us in this room can agree upon that we just want to provide reliable autism resources and supports for those with autism across the lifespan. So finally, and then another big reason why we can't thank Visit Mesa enough for doing this certification is because, as we heard Mark mention at the beginning of the day, some disabilities are invisible. And now the two most common things I get after a presentation during the Q&A is, Kerry, you have autism, but you don't look like you have autism. And then my other personal favorite, Kerry, you have autism, but you seem so normal. It's like, how does that work? I'm like, and what's normal supposed to look like anyways? But this is why we need to embrace the importance of just being kind and inclusive to everyone, because regardless if you don't see something on the surface, doesn't mean that that person isn't going through challenges in their own life. That's why we promote the importance of kindness and inclusion. And when groups such as Visit Mesa give certified autism accreditation, it gives all these families a sense of comfort that they can have their families come to these areas and feel supported and included, and to know that somebody cares. That's one of the most amazing things. So those with autism, again, face isolation. So we can't thank you enough for deciding to join this village, and understanding that your commitment is showing that you care. So finally, just to cap off today's presentation, I was the kid who never was able to truly travel due to its sensory challenges. And after overcoming many of my obstacles, I still today get told so many times the things that I can't do. And for example, when I started public speaking, being told 9 years ago by Speaker Spiro, I'd never make a full-time job public speaking about our special needs community because it was too niche a topic. And I thought that was ridiculous. We have 1 in 5 Americans who currently today have a disability. So I decided to prove them wrong. And later down the line, when experts told me that I wouldn't graduate from high school because of the severity of my autism diagnosis, I wanted to prove those experts wrong. And now, as of last May, I can say that I'm now a doctor, and I have a 147-page dissertation if anyone wants to read it afterwards. It's kind of a nightmare. So, literally, and again, autism is a spectrum, and I hope every single person has the opportunity on the autism spectrum to thrive and live the best quality of life possible. But for all of you in this room, never forget what your contributions do for this community. Because obviously there's a huge village in this room, and this village reminds me so much of my friends and family back in New Jersey. And I know this because I've seen this firsthand in every single place I've gone to go. So continue to push and continue to strive, and never forget that you are not alone in this community. Because when you think there's no one else trying to help this autism community, just know that I will be there for you, and that there are probably people in this room that you could connect with who will be there for you as well, and to keep fighting with you side by side for a better day for our community. Because at the end of the day, I love to say that autism doesn't come with an instruction guide. It comes with a family who will never give up. And I truly, truly believe family is who you make it, and the village of who is in your community is who you make it. So continue to strive, continue to push, and just know that no one thing in your loved ones' lives can define who they are. Only you can help them define their lives and their journeys in the way that they best see it every single day. Thank you all so much for having me here today.